Application: The Financial Shenanigans of 2001. The tax reduction enacted in June 2001 was one of the largest tax cuts in our nation's history, with a revenue cost of 1.7% of GDP over the subsequent decade. The tax cut consisted of an extraordinarily convoluted set of phase-ins and phase-outs of various tax cuts in order to comply with a congressional budget plan limiting the 11-year cost through 2011 of the cuts to $1.35 trillion. Perhaps most extreme was an infamous sunset provision by which all of the tax cuts suddenly disappear on December 31st, 2010, thus reducing the 2011 cost of the tax cut to zero. The Senate originally had the sunset on December 31st, 2011, but legislators realized this would push the cost beyond the $1.35 trillion limit. The bill itself contained numerous tax cuts operating on erratic schedules. Many of the cuts would phase in over periods longer than in any prior American legislation, backloading most of the fiscal impact toward 2010. After gradual phase-ins, many of the cuts would be fully enacted for only a short time before expiring because of the sunset provision. For example, the estate tax, which is levied on bequests over roughly $2 million, would be phased out entirely by 2010 and then reintroduced in 2011. This schedule led economist and Nobel laureate Paul Krugman to point out that children may want to make sure their parents die in 2010 rather than 2011, labeling this the Throw Mama from the Train Act. Similar tricks were played with expansions of tax credits and other reductions. For example, full reductions in upper income tax rates would start only in 2006, then expire in 2010. Such convoluted scheduling allowed legislators to claim action that had been taken on a wide range of issues while delaying the fiscal consequences associated with these actions. Through the Joint Committee on Taxation estimated, though the Joint Committee on Taxation estimated the bill's final cost at $1.349 trillion, just under the limit. Other estimates were significantly higher. The Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, for example, noted that the cost rose to $1.8 trillion once measures certain to pass in the near future were accounted for. The Center on Budget and Policy Priorities then calculated the cost of increased interest payments due to rising debt caused by the tax cuts and found the true cost of the bill through 2011 to be $2.3 trillion. Assuming the sunset provision was ultimately eliminated, the tax cuts cost would grow in the decade from 2012 to 2011 to $4.1 trillion without even including the additional costs of interest payments Indeed, over the next 75 years, these tax cuts were estimated to cost 1.7% of the gross national product, which is more than twice the size of the much debated Social Security deficit over this same time period.